If it's not working from this point, we may have to put an end to this stream while I do some technical fixing. But we'll see. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's all good. I hope. We're going to open up the spaceplane hangar here. Everything looks good right now. And we will go ahead and open up the... Actually, these are the exact same. So we'll open this up, and at this point, we know that this is very close to the ground. So we probably want to drop this down a tiny, tiny amount. This is probably too much. So down to about here-ish. I don't really love the positioning of it. I'd prefer to fix the problem for real. But let's go ahead and do that. And let's see, this is the moment of truth. If we start having massive frame drops at this point, then we'll know. No, it appears good. Maybe. Oh, maybe. No, I think we're fine. Okay, so let's give this a go. I'm not doing any inputs here. We should just naturally shoot straight down the runway and then take off. But we're going to veer off to the side here. I'm not doing any inputs here. So I'm guessing I'm now trying to take off. I want to see what happens the moment we actually get off the ground here. Which we should have plenty of velocity to do. That's interesting. Well, we'll take off here. So, I'm now doing no inputs. And I'm watching over here. So we're holding about here with SAS on. That seems fine. Okay. Now YouTube is telling me that my bitrate is too high. YouTube, I believe you're drunk. I'm at the recommended bitrate. Okay, let me check the stream settings here. Yeah, it should be fine. I'm pretty sure YouTube is drunk on that front. So yeah, there's been no inputs here, and we're completely steady. So it's not anything to do with our aerodynamics. It's not anything to do with our thrust. It has to be our landing gear. So we're going to revert that back to the spaceplane hangar here. Cool. With that knowledge, I'm now going to make sure that we have turning disabled or steering disabled on all three of these. Now, I'm wondering if... I think these are slightly angled. Okay. Let's hop over to... That's obviously very angled. Let's hop over to about here. No, that's backwards. No, don't go backwards. Are we gimbal locked? Spicy. Okay, well, we're just going to snap it like that. I believe that's not angled. Cool. So that's steering disabled on the backs and steering enabled on the front. Let's try that with no inputs and see how that goes. Cool. Why is YouTube recommending a stream bitrate of 23,500 kbps? That's absurd, YouTube. No, that's not going to happen. Okay, no inputs. I'm doing nothing. This is just SAS from here. This is looking better. Up until that point. It was better. It was definitely better. Interesting. We just don't like this building in particular, it seems. So that was no inputs at all, right? I believe that if I was to try to take off there, with no side-to-side inputs, I think we'd get off the landing, like the runway. I'm pretty sure. So let's give that a go. Throttle up, SAS on. All I'm going to do for inputs now is pull up. That's all I'm going to do here. We're pulling off to the left, but it's not huge. We're pulling off to the left a lot. I'm correcting it. So it's correctable. The SAS just doesn't do it. That's interesting. So we were able to stay on the runway this time. I mean, that's going to be a problem, but that is one strong light. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, that was a bit of an issue there. Once we get off the ground, we're completely fine to fly. It's that initial lift that's tough. We can probably counteract that, though. If we were to have some, like, I don't know, angled SRBs or something, there'd be something weird that we could do for that. But I'm actually thinking about not having this design be the design that goes to Elu. I'd like something much, much lighter. Like, way lighter. So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. This is only intended to get up into orbit. Now, of course, it's not going to get there with these afterburning turbofan engines. That's fine. It doesn't have to. For the moment, this seems okay. The main question that I have right now is, what is driving that side-to-side motion? Let's take a look at our center of mass, center of thrust, aerodynamics. It's all in line. And it should be good. Okay. Well, let's try this again. And this time I'm going to try to counteract that drift off a little bit more, I would say aggressively. I was kind of too aggressive last time, but that was mostly caused by the fact that it was so late. So I'm going to be a little earlier on it this time. Okay, are we going to start drifting? Yes. Correcting. We're pulling off to the left again. Correcting. Oh, that was an overcorrection. And now we're going to start sliding around here. Okay, I'm going to go off the runway here. Yeah, and all we need to do is get our nose up a little bit more, and we can lift off much easier. So we can lift off before we get to that point. That'll be fine. So in order to do that, we just need to make this be lower. That could do it right there. We just need to get nosed up a little bit more so that we get more lift under the wings. Cool. So let's get out there again. There we go. I'm just going to be watching for that pull off to the left and trying to correct it a bit. And we may lose one or more engines when we actually nose up here. We're trying to pull off to the right now. That's very unstable. For sure. But if we can get to the end of the runway and not hit one of those lights, then we're home free. There we go. Easy peasy. So at this point, we're super stable. And we can just get ourselves more and more altitude at this point, basically forever, until such a time as we are deprived of oxygen in these engines. So we can lift up our nose a decent amount. We have a lot of authority on that. And we can sit, you know, somewhere around here-ish. The SAS is dropping our nose back down. But yeah, we can sit somewhere around here and just get quite a lot of altitude. Now the question is, what is our altitude ceiling with these engines? We've got a lot of airflow with these radial air intakes. And physics warping, our nose went down. Oh, wow. Okay. Physics warping can get pretty exciting. Good to know. But I want to get us more altitude here. And I want to bring over our prograde marker. Really, we should be locking to prograde. The prograde marker really doesn't want to move. Okay. Okay. Good to know. It really wants to be at this 45-degree angle. But if we were to rotate this way, now we can bring it back. Got it. Okay. So then we can sit somewhere around here-ish. We need to start pulling the prograde marker back this way. But we can see here our apoapsis is not very far away. So that is the general concern with these sorts of engines. Yes, you can get extreme amounts of delta V with them. But it's very hard to actually break atmosphere with something like this for obvious reasons. And then we just start nosing down, apparently, for no real reason there. We can try to pull it back up, but I'm guessing this is to do with our altitude. Like, this is going to struggle at flying too much higher than all this. But we can pull it on over like so. And then just do something kind of like that. Cool. So that's functional. It functions. The question is, where do we go from here? Well, I still want to know what our ceiling is on this thing. We can see that our nose is starting to be forced down here. And now our speed's starting to come back up. So it looks like our ceiling is around here. Most likely. Unless we were to put something, you know, a little more fancy on here. So let's revert that back to the spaceplane hangar, and let's think about how we might want to get this thing into space properly. Well, one thing we can definitely do is replace these afterburners and ditch the radial air intake with what we originally intended to do. Now, this is not going to be enough thrust to probably take off. We can try it, but I don't expect it to be particularly effective. So, let's see how this goes, and then I'm probably going to mount on something else. But I want to see if we can even take off like this. I highly doubt it. Our thrust to weight is 0.1. Right? Like, we're going to need to get a lot of speed over this surface to make this happen. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. These are suddenly... Were they always opposite of each other like that? That's not right. Let's revert that back to the spaceplane hangar. That's definitely incorrect. Can we... Yeah, just deploy inverted. There we go. Let's try that again. Now our thrust to weight is mega low. That's fine. It doesn't have to be super high. We'll iterate that in a little bit here. But hey, we're getting off the pad, kind of. Okay, so they're still opposite. I see. Okay, we're going to have to revert that back. That's weird. It looked like they were correct before, but maybe I'm wrong on that. Let's try flipping them around. I don't know which way is which here. Now they don't want to go in at this angle. That's interesting. Well, one thing we can do is we can use the rotate tool here with snap mode on to just flip them around. That should do the trick. Cool. So let's see what happens with that. Beautiful. I say as we're just staring at a black screen. They are still opposite. Huh. That's interesting. And I'd also like to be able to use them for steering. Which it is active for, but... is it because they were still set to deploy direction inverted? Maybe. But I don't think so. We'll find out. Hopefully. We will hopefully find out. No, they're still inverted. Cool. That's not cool. So, why are they still inverted from each other? Can we deploy angle -15? Okay, that should do the trick. -15. There we go. Now it should work. In theory. Or at least, they should be the same direction as each other. If that was broken in the previous attempt, then... A, how did I not notice that? And B, I'm kind of shocked that we took... Really? Even with switching it to -15? Then we change it back to 15 here. There's no difference. It's completely ignoring that. Okay, so what if we change this one to -15? No difference at all. Huh. You can also notice we're drifting off to this side with just no thrust whatsoever. We can turn on our brakes action group. And then turn it back off. And yeah, we're just slowly turning this way. We're not, I think, ultimately going to fix that, but this is weird. Why are you inverted? That does literally nothing. Huh. That's very strange. Very strange indeed. Let's try taking these off of here. And straight up duplicating this. Now we're going to need to turn snap off if we want them to have a hope of fitting on here. I'm putting it on like this. Hopefully they're rotated correctly. But we also tried rotating them, and that did nothing. But let's try replacing them like that and seeing if that works. If it doesn't work, I'll try flipping them with the place tool. Maybe it ignores the rotate tool. I don't know. Let's see what happens here. Okay, still inverted. Now, why would that be? Well, we can try grabbing here And flipping not like that, but like that. And then grabbing here and doing the same flip. Let's see if that does anything. Maybe. Oh, these are currently missing because we weren't in mirror mode, apparently. But no, that didn't fix it. Okay, well, in that case, I think that we just get rid of the one, this one here, and just use these. So we're going to need to go into mirror mode and put them on, and I'll just do something kind of like that. I don't love it, but let's see how that goes. I don't expect that we're going to be able to get off the pad like this, or rather off of the runway like this, with our thrust to weight being so low, but I want to see. I want to see if we can actually fly. It'd be wild. No doubt about that. Well, those aren't inverted. So let's see. Do we also have that issue where we're pulling off to the side? Well, SAS is actually trying to counteract it a bit, but yes, we are still pulling off to the side. I'm fixing that manually here. Okay. Apparently these are currently inverted from what I'm expecting. And they completely ignore this inversion, so I'll have to flip those around once we're done with this attempt. I'm not expecting that we actually get off the ground, but, well, we will at the end of the pad. The end of the runway here. We'll get off the ground for a little bit and we'll glide at least. The question is, will we have enough speed to maintain our velocity, or to maintain our flight? Will we be coming back down? We'll find out. This is much more controllable, that's for sure, but we're also only going at 38 meters per second. It's not very speedy, but it may be enough. We're not going to lift off like this, but once we go off this, it's not really a ramp, but this drop off here, we'll see. Nope. Not at all. Okay. Wait. Am I dumb? I might be dumb. We can test it. There's a bit of a ramp off over here that we can target instead of using the runway. What could possibly go wrong? So we're going to head over here instead. Okay. We're of course going to need a little bit more speed than this down at this level, but for now that's fine. Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Hilarious. Well, no testing of that. Okay, I'm going to revert that back to the spaceplane hangar. We obviously need more speed. We already know that. So, I wouldn't mind some, like, underslung jet engines here. So what we would do would be something very, very basic. Something along the lines of some radial decouplers right about here. And then we'd be running simply like a T400 or something like that. Now, this is not angled the way we want it to be. We're going to need to, like, angling the thrust here would not be the worst of concepts. But we'd bring this guy up here, and we would change this angle a little bit. Maybe have it be going ever so slightly upwards, like that. And then we'd need to put jet engines on this. I don't know how long we'd be able to run Panthers. And we'd obviously need some air intake for that. So how long would we be able to run the Panthers on this? 935 seconds, that's pretty good. So we'd just run like a circular intake right over here. And this would be our jet engines. I don't know if they're going to be resting on the ground here. Maybe. They might be. And I'm angling them slightly upwards, deliberately here, we'll see how this goes. We're not planning on igniting the nuclear engines for a while here. And to be clear, we probably don't need nuclear engines here. Yeah, we're resting on the jet engines here. I'm not surprised about that one. Not surprised about it at all. So let's revert that on back. And I would like to think about potentially putting oxidizer back in this. These are only liquid fuel fuselages, though. For the time being, we'll take the oxidizer out, and that'll be okay. So we're obviously going to need a little bit more space over here. We could attach the landing gear here. I don't think that's a great concept. I'm actually going to put it back, and we're just going to cheese this landing gear for the time being. So we're just going to move it down like that, and we're going to move this up, and we're going to abuse clipping a little bit here, just for testing purposes. I will change this later on, but I want... we're going to need more space in this. We're going to need more space. Okay. So we're going to have to go to... These are currently on small landing gear. We're going to take them to medium. Okay. The medium landing gear will pop in out over here. And I believe, well, they're going to need to be rotated for sure. We want to snap it. Approximately like that-ish. And then we will duplicate those. And position it right there. That'll give us some more space to work with, and we'll just move these down for the time being, just to make sure that we have the space. Okay, they're not connected here, and I'm aware of that, but it's fine. I just want to see if we're resting on those engines, and I want to see how that offset thrust affects our takeoff profile. Because those underslung engines should be more than capable of letting us lift off here. Yeah. Now, they're not strutted on, so they might wiggle around a little bit, but let's see how this goes. We're going to run just these engines. Cool. And they should be... They should be biased towards lifting up because of their angling. We're definitely wiggling around a bit here, and I think that's due to the angling on these landing gear. Oh, that's exciting. Okay, I guess we're here now. Beautiful. Well, there's a drop-off over here, too. So we'll see if we're able to get off the ground here. And we've got a lot of burn time here. This burn time is going up? I'm sorry, what? Whoa. Okay. We don't like to do stuff, it seems. But that's fine. What I really want to test here is what direction are these control surfaces going? Are they inverted or not? And I don't technically know that. But here we are, in the water. Perfect. Wait, our jet engines are working in the water? We're a seaplane, I guess. That's news. Best boat. I love it. We should probably retract our landing gear that's causing drag. And there's no reason to have it here. Beautiful. There's no oxygen deprivation. I'm confused by this. This is actually hilarious. This is kind of working. Kind of. I mean, this was not the intended design, for sure. But this is hilarious. I love it. We don't have enough speed to get out of here, to be clear. Maybe if we were to activate the nuclear engines as well. But man, that's close. Okay, let's go ahead and revert that back to the spaceplane hangar. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to remove these control surfaces. We were doing better with the control surfaces, it felt like, when we only had the single control surface here. So we're going to go back to that. And I want to check to make sure that it's not inverted from our... Oh, we want mirroring on. I want to make sure that it's not inverted from our afterburners. Let's see about that. Okay. Now we're going to need a way... Like, we can get up a decent amount and get a decent amount of horizontal speed with this, right? But we need a way to punch through the atmosphere. Oh, wow, that's quite a dance. That was quite a dance indeed. Okay, I'm just checking here. Good. That'll do. Okay, let's see if we can actually take off like this. Keep in mind, I'm very bad at planes. I'm much better, more practiced at rockets. But this is something I need to work on, for sure. We need to head over this direction. Thank you very much. Maybe not that far this direction. Okay. Sure. I guess that's functional. It's pretty suspect down the runway. But once we get into the air, it's not bad. Once we get into the air, it's not bad at all. So we can turn over something like that. And then bring it on back to be right on this 90-degree marker, approximately. And we're going to want to potentially pull up here. Okay. So this can take us quite a long ways. There's no doubt about that. But it can't take us to where we want to go. The question is, where do we want to go? Well, I was talking about Elu at the beginning of this stream, before we ran into the technical issues. I'm not sure if we have the time for that at this point, but at this point I mostly just want to get this guy into orbit. Now we could potentially do that, but we need some sort of a kick stage here to get us from this point to a point where these nuclear engines are actually useful, right? Because it's hugely wasteful to use them at this point. Their thrust is improving, to be sure. And the underslung engines are working quite well. Oh, we've got oxidizer in these tanks. We should ditch that oxidizer. That's a lot of dead weight that we don't need to carry. I didn't realize that we had that, but we should definitely get rid of that next time we are back in the VAB. Cool. So we're just chilling at like 163 meters per second here. We are getting additional altitude, but at this point, this is when we'd want to kick in some sort of a powerful engine that would push us past here and take us... Oh, hello. Why, hello there. Is that Minmus? It's certainly not Moon. I don't think I've ever seen Minmus in the atmosphere like this before. Let's take a look here. Minmus is out over that way. So it could be Minmus. Yeah, I believe it is. Fantastic. Okay, so we definitely need some sort of a kick stage from here that would just accelerate us dramatically and push our apoapsis from where it's at right now, which is like 4,000 kilometers, out to like here, you know? Somewhere where we can use the nuclear engines effectively. Our nuclear engines are getting more effective all the time as we're burning this, but they're not quite where I'd like them to be. And you can see that we're slowing down here, so we're going to be required to nose down at a certain point. Our altitude is not, or rather our ceiling is not too much higher than this. It will be a little higher, maybe like 6,000 meters, something like that. But it's not particularly high. So let's start thinking about a kick stage that would do that. I do want to make these be, you know, more attached. I feel like that would be a good thing. There we go. So, how would we want to do this? I'm just thinking here, I would like it to be... Well, first thing we can do is we can definitely ditch this oxidizer. We don't need it. What is the weight savings of that? About 2.2 tons. That's quite a lot of weight savings. I'm not going to lie. 2.2 tons shaved off of that is a lot. So that's all good. This stage seems reasonable. But this is not, in fact, the final form here. We need some form of rocket booster here. And we could have it eat up the oxidizer that can fill here, as well as here. And we don't have any oxidizer in here, but that's okay. We could have it do that. We could give it its own independent tank. Or we could just have it be SRBs. That's an option too. Now, if we were to mount the SRBs on top here, that thrust up here would, by default, push our nose down. So we want it to be underslung if we want it to push our nose up. So we'd need it to be like out here, kind of like we have these underslung jet engines, right? We could do something absolutely ridiculous, and it would never work. Specifically, what I'm thinking, oh boy, this is a terrible, terrible idea. What I'm thinking right now is it would be something along the lines, oh, this is going to be so bad, along the lines of this, right? We do another underslung tank here, and this would be an SRB, and it would be a Clydesdale. This is never going to fit. It's never, ever going to work. And we need to also have it be slightly, not like that. We'd have it be slightly angled up, just like we did with this. Not that angled up. That is way too angled up. That is hilarious. Okay. So we would have that come on down like so. This is way too much. We're never going to be able to get this off the ground because of our landing gear. You know what? The joke is over. The joke is over. We're getting rid of it. So for a real kick stage here, we could, in theory, go with something like potentially a thumper. So we put that there. That's slightly angled up. We don't seem to be having a problem with this here, but we should certainly move this forward like so that that's not impacting the ground. We don't have a problem with this wiggling around. We almost certainly will with the thumper, so I'm going to strut that in about like this. I have no idea if we can take off without these assisting us on takeoff. That's something we should figure out, and I'm also going to put an aerodynamic nose cone on them. There we go. Just so the aerodynamics aren't so bad. But these weigh an additional 15 tons. Now, if we can fire them at the correct time after we've taken off and we're approaching the limits of what the Panthers can achieve, these might have enough. Allegedly 0 seconds of burn. I don't think that's true. These might have enough to get us at least close to an orbit, which these would then be able to finish it off. So let's see how that goes. Can we take off with these underslung SRBs? Let's see how that goes. Any moment now, KSP. You can do it. You can do it. Okay, we're not resting on the SRBs. That's a good sign. And we shouldn't impact them when we take off. Okay. Let's see if this works. I'd like to take off with a pure jet engine here. However, we previously had to use the drop-off at the end of the runway here. We may simply be too heavy. Oh, this steering is awful. Okay. We may simply be too heavy here. We'll see. We're getting a pretty good head of steam up here. Good speed. We are nose up. But for how long? This is not wanting to hold steady here, like it did previously. It's much tougher to fly, no doubt about that. But we did stabilize out a little bit. But man, it really wants to pitch over here, or rather, roll over. It's not really liking to fly, but it does fly. So that's something. I don't know what, but it's something. It is certainly something. So, here's the real question. What happens when we kick in the SRBs? I don't know. We can also turn on the afterburners. Oh. Okay. We can turn on the afterburners on both of these. There we go. And start to build up some speed that way. And then... Okay, just checking that. SRBs. Oh, that really likes to pitch up way too much. Good to know. Okay, so we'll revert that back. We're going to have to angle these a little less aggressively. I can't say I'm shocked about that, but we're going to bring that on down. Maybe even a bit more. Let's have it snap. It's already underslung, so I want it to just be dead on in terms of... We may even want to angle it slightly down. Just to counteract its own up, like its own nose up force. Kind of like that. Okay, so the fact that we have to toggle the afterburners on both of them individually is a little awkward. We may want to toggle the afterburners immediately and take off that way. But I do think having the afterburners made that quite a bit more controllable. It's very awkward to take off. No doubt about that. But let's go ahead and toggle on the afterburners. And let's go. Okay. We're definitely accelerating a lot faster. We just need to get our nose up a little bit here. Ooh, that's really wanting to head off. Okay. And we're off. We just need to get it under control a little bit. There we go. We'll retract our landing gear. trying to roll us over a little bit here, but we're trying to go nose down right now, which I don't necessarily love. Okay, let's kick in the SRBs and see what happens here, but I want to get our roll under control. It's still really trying to pitch us up very heavily. And it really tries to roll, too. Okay. Good to know. Well, that's the Apoapsis height, but it's not very controllable. I wonder what happens if we just lock to prograde there. Honestly. Rather than having it be on SAS assist, what happens if we just lock to prograde at that point? Because it was semi-control... Whoa. Let's try reverting that back to launch. It was semi-controllable up until that point. So let's see what happens there. Now, this would be way easier, obviously, if these were inline, right? And we could probably do that. We could probably make them be inline, now that I think about it. But I want to try this first. So if this doesn't work very well, then I'll see about that. Throttle up, SAS on, and let's get this turned back over here. There we go. And I'm just going to lock it to prograde. I'm overriding it to take off right now. But let's go here. Now, I do see that these are wiggling around a bit, and that's probably not helping. So I would want to solidify those. But that's part of this iterative design process, right? We find problems, we fix them, we find new problems. Okay. So then when we take off, it wants to veer off this direction every time. And it really wants to roll over to the left for some reason. Okay, we'll retract these. And we'll see about pulling up and not rolling over to the left. Thank you very much. Let's roll over to the right now and fix our trajectory a little bit. Cool. Yeah, I don't think that locking to prograde is helpful. Good to know. We're just going to bring this back for a little bit here. And continue to keep it a little rotated. This is way too much verticality. Can we not? Thanks, but now we're too rotated. We've kind of stalled here, and we're coming back down. Cool. Okay, so I want to revert this back, and I want to change a couple of things around here. So we've definitely found a couple of issues. One of the issues is that this is loose and likes to wiggle. So let's go ahead and strut that to the wing in mirror mode, ideally. There we go. And now I want to remove these guys, right? Like, I don't know how helpful that really is, but I want to move them over here. I'd love to have them mounted, in theory, like, well, we'd have to ditch this aerodynamic nose cone. I'd love to have them mounted, in theory, here. The question is, how do we take off without blowing these up? Well, I have an answer to that. So what we're going to do here, this is going to look really weird, but what I'm going to do here is I am going to put in a decoupler here. So we need like a TD12 decoupler, or TD25, no, TD12. So TD12's there, and then we're going to put these guys in line. I'm going to strut them together so that they don't wiggle all over. And I'm going to strut them on the bottom as well. There we go. And then I'm just going to put in a single small landing gear on each of them back here. Now, this landing gear will be detached later on. when these get detached. And we'll do something like that. So that way, that will get... We'll only be able to nose up so much, right? That's the problem here. Now, I'm pretty sure that this is going to make our center of mass really wacky compared to our aerodynamic overlay. Absolutely. So here's the question. How does this handle when the center of lift is this far ahead of the center of mass? I think it's going to want to nose up extremely easily, perhaps too easily, is my guess. But let's find out on that. I want to know exactly what it does here. This is very experimental, to be clear. So let's see what we've got going on here. Any moment now, KSB. You can load in. I have faith. I also have tea, so I guess I should drink that. Now this is interesting. Okay, I'm going to turn the brakes on here and hope that this kind of mini Kraken stops. The mini Kraken isn't stopping, but look at the way that this is set up. This is actually kind of ideal. We've definitely got a mini Kraken going on here. And I'm wondering if it's something clipping together here, but I kind of just want to try this. The Kraken is probably going to make things really, really bad. Oh. The SRBs are in stage 1, but sure. I guess this is one way to do things. Oh, yeah. I thought that might be the case. We almost landed it there. That was hilarious. Now, to be clear, we're not intending to launch it with the SRBs. But the moment they kicked in, there was that huge nose up. And I figured that that would end up happening. Now, I want to try this without the SRBs firing right away. And we'll do something kind of like this. We seem to be better on the Kraken, so that's great. And we're going to toggle afterburners here. Should have done that first, but it's okay. And let's see if we can lift this thing off with just our jet engines. This is going to be really weird. And I think that the center of mass may end up being an insurmountable problem for this particular design. Hey! See what I mean about it really wants to nose up? Like, it really wants to nose up. This is not surprising because of the center of mass. So, we can move our wings back. That wasn't necessarily what I intended to do. We can move our wings back. Let's take a look at the center of mass versus the aerodynamic overlay. It wanting to nose up isn't necessarily a bad thing. We can move it back to be about here. Something like this. And I want to toggle on the afterburners right now. So it's going to want to nose up less, but it's still going to want to nose up. So then I want to make sure that these SRBs are in a separate stage, like this, and I want to make sure that the SRB detachment is in a separate stage, like that. Okay, so it's still going to want to nose up, but it shouldn't want to nose up quite as badly. It wanted to nose up, like, ridiculously badly as it was. And having the center of lift be behind the center of mass made it want to nose down a lot harder than I wanted it to. So we do want it to be maybe ever so slightly in front of it, but this is still probably too much. So let's work our way out of this Kraken, hopefully. It's still krakening down the runway a little bit, but let's see how this goes. It's much more stable, but it's not exactly stable. Last time we were able to lift off around this point. It's definitely not wanting to nose up as naturally. But it still wants to nose up too much. Okay. I'm not shocked by that either. Hey, some of it survived. Cool. So I'm not shocked by that either. So we definitely have a mass distribution issue. We knew that that was the case. So I'm going to have to back off, I think, on the size of these SRBs. But I think the overall concept is fine. So we're going to back off on the size of them. So those were, I believe, thumpers. And we're going to go back to the... what am I looking for? Hammers. Now, these are pretty unlikely to actually kick us into space, right? Like, I don't expect that to be a thing. But we can pop these guys in over here. Like so. And that should be much more manageable for our weight. And I guess we'll have some double struts there. That's fine. That should be much more manageable as far as our weight is concerned. Now, I don't think we're going to be resting on this landing gear. This only exists to make sure that this is not destroyed when we lift off. We'll see if that ends up happening or not. Otherwise, what other tweaks do we want to make to this? Well, we're obviously going to need more power than this to get us into space. I'm quite certain of that. I want to check the center of mass versus the aerodynamic overlay. And now we're wanting to nose down here. So we need to move these wings forward to about here, where we're pretty much equal. Cool. Let's see how that goes. And again, I'm not expecting these SRBs to kick us all the way into space. If they do, that would be amazing. They might give us the altitude that we need, but I kind of doubt it. In reality, we'll see how it goes. Whoa, okay. The wings just fell off. Thanks, Kraken. And it's still jumping. We're going to need to do something about that. But we'll revert that back to the launch. And we'll try this again. Will it just pop off again? No? We're good. Okay. SAS on. Throttle up. And off we go. This is much more steerable. Oh, this is the SRBs. We fired the SRBs here, not the jet engines. That's definitely not what I was going for, but I guess it'll let us test the takeoff procedure anyway. Okay, we got to get going pretty fast, and we still weren't able to technically take off there. But it was okay. I think that wasn't too bad. We're going to revert that back to the launch again, and this time we're going to fire the correct engines. The SRBs, of course, are not intended to be takeoff assist. Although these SRBs might be an okay takeoff assist if we end up needing it. So we'll swap these around. There we go. SAS on, throttle up, and off we go. Beautiful. The jet engines take us off. The SRBs get some altitude after the jet engines are getting close to not being able to do that anymore. Man, this thing likes to meander all over the runway. Okay. Really? Still flipping, huh? That's interesting. I didn't expect it to be quite that free, but we can just tweak the location of the wings to fix that. So that shouldn't be too bad. So we want it to be, I think, slightly... Let's see, we want to use the move tool here. We want it to be slightly behind, kind of like that. Maybe not that slightly, but let's test that and see how that feels. I'm very inexperienced with plane design. You can probably tell. So that's going to be the tweaks that we're going to make for a little bit until that takeoff is feeling correct. And then we're going to take off and get to about the maximum altitude that we're going to get with these engines, which, or rather, the maximum... Really? Can we not do that? Let's revert that and not have the Kraken. Thank you. So we need to see how far we can get with that. Okay. Throttle up. SAS on. Really? I'm so dumb. We're going to revert that back to the spaceplane hangar and do this in the hangar so that I don't have to remember to do this every time. It was the wrong staging again. So we need to invert these. There we go. Jet engines first, then the SRBs. Cool. And I'm also thinking about tweaking the rotation on these. I think they're not quite straight. Is that straight? It should be snapped to straight, in theory. But it might not quite be. I feel like it's not. That's definitely not straight. I feel like that's more straight. Okay, let's see how that feels. Beautiful. So we can take off. There's no doubt about that. The question now is, how far does our kick stage get us? Will that get us far enough for our nuclear stage to take over? And then, after that, the question is, how are we going to get further? And Kraken. Oh, this Kraken, though. Okay. I don't know why the wings just fall off sometimes. I have to assume that that's because of the Kraken. I can't think of any other reason why that would happen. Okay. So SAS on. Throttle up. And let's go. Cool. This is way more stable. It's still trying to pull off a little bit, but it can be countered. And we'll try to lift off here. We're coming up on the end of the runway, but that's fine. Cool. We're still tipping up way too heavily. Okay. We'll pull that back, and that just indicates that our center of lift isn't correct yet. So we will check in on our aerodynamic overlay and pull this back to be about here. We'll see how that goes. Cool. So let's get this going. Lots and lots of trial and error, but that's to be expected with a stream like this, to be honest. That'll be fine. Cool. Off we go. Are those impacting the ground right now? No, they're currently not. That's good. That's what we want. We don't want to fly off of the runway at this moment. We want to do that at the end, if at all possible. Okay, how's our lift? Much more manageable. Much, much more manageable. Fantastic. So we'll retract all of our landing gear so we no longer have that drag. And we're going to look to get ourselves a little bit of altitude here. Cool. So that felt like a pretty solid takeoff. A little late, seeing as it requires the ground to drop off, but I think that's okay. Nothing too major. So let's get to an apoapsis of about 4 or 5 kilometers here. I'm going to nose up a little bit more aggressively here. We're still accelerating. I like it. And we're burning through our afterburner fuel pretty quickly, right? But that's fine. We are completely content with doing that. As long as we're still building speed, this is completely fine. And then we'll kick in our hammers eventually. Because it's inline, this should, in theory, be fine. The real question is, how high will that push our apoapsis, and how controllable will this be? That's the real question. Okay, I just tried to yaw us over, and that ended up lifting our nose. So I will not try that again. It'll be fine. Time to apoapsis is currently hovering. I saw it go down, and then it went back up. Yeah, it's certainly hovering, but you can see our thrust to weight is dropping, as is our speed. So let's see how high our apoapsis height goes before it starts dropping back down. Once we see it start dropping back down, that is when we will kick in our hammers. We want to get as much altitude as we can first. Now, our hammer is actually losing thrust right now, so that's something to think about too. SRBs are more effective the lower you are. Apoapsis is reaching 8 kilometers here. That's pretty decent. We probably should think about kicking in the SRBs fairly soon here. But this is very stable. Once we reach an apoapsis, our time to apoapsis is dropping. So once we reach an oh, we're nosing up. I'm going to kick him in. Okay. So we're just going to see how high up this will push us. And then I'm going to bring this down. We only have 5 more seconds of burn left on our SRBs. So those are flamed out. Now we're going to fire up our nuclear engines. We don't have a lot of speed. And our time to apoapsis is decreasing, so I'm not surprised by this. We knew that that wouldn't be enough power to kick us into orbit. I just wanted to see how far it would get us, and now we know. The answer is not amazingly. We're nosing down here. We're pretty much at our ceiling of how high we can get with this particular setup. Okay. It's not bad. 15, almost 16 kilometers there. That's not so bad. But we'll go ahead and revert that back, and we knew that we would require additional power at that stage. So, we can kick up to there, and then what is the question? And then what? Well, at that point, this is liquid fuel fuselage here. This is all liquid fuel up here, intended to be used with the atomic rocket motors, right? So that's all well and good. This kicks us up a decent amount, but we probably want to kick it in, well, it's a little complicated. We probably want to kick it in a little earlier, because our Panthers and our SRBs both lose efficiency as we go up. So that's probably something that we want to do. Now, we're going to need some form of way to get us orbital from here. The question is, how do we want to do that? I want to avoid additional underslung engines. It's an option, but I don't think it's a great one. We could include oxidizer in all of these engines and then drain fuel out of here, but I don't like that option either. I want this fuel to remain entirely untouched for the atomic rocket motors. So, the question is, how do we go from here? We could make there be more solid fuel boosters, including some underslung ones. That's an option. I like where we're at for our aerodynamic overlay. I think this is pretty good. So whatever we do, it shouldn't really mess too much with that. So we could think about a couple of radial decouplers over here, like we had previously, and some underslung SRBs. I mean, if they're thumpers, that would be kind of perfect. If we could figure out a way to make there be proper thumpers here without messing this up too much. Which, as you can see, that moves our center of mass down quite a lot. Which isn't necessarily what we want. It's already a little bit down. We can see how this feels, though. I don't know that it'll feel great. But we can do something along the lines of this. Run some aerodynamic nose cones on here. We would need... not that guy. Where's the one I'm looking for? This one. So run something kind of like this, right? And then these SRBs would kick in at the same time that these do. So we would do something kind of like this. These would be ejected first, then these would be ejected, and then the jet engines could potentially be ejected later, and the nuclear engines would fire around here. Now, if we look at our aerodynamic overlay here, we can see it's not that bad. I think it's quasi-reasonable. I'm going to move this guy. That doesn't actually do anything. Okay. I'm going to keep it where it's at. That doesn't change the mass as far as the center of mass is concerned. Okay. So we'll do that, and we'll see how this ends up going. I do think that this is angled incorrectly. And that's way too much. Angle it more along the lines of this. Okay. We'll need to strut it, that's for sure. And we'll have that go somewhere around here. Okay. I keep forgetting that you can shift right-click to pan around like this. This is something I need to do more often, for sure. Okay. So we'll just launch this and see how that goes. This is probably not going to get us to space either. I expect this to be somewhat uncontrollable. But let's see how that goes. Maybe not super uncontrollable. It might be a little awkward lifting it off. That's something that we should definitely observe, because we're already pretty heavy. But let's see how this goes. Those underslung engines are pretty far out as well, but okay, we didn't have any massive crack in there. That's good. And let's go. Just bringing it on down the runway here. And we want to lift off with just these guys. And then we want to get our landing gear stowed. Once the landing gear is stowed, that's when we want... These guys gimbaling, like, opposite directions? Whatever. Once these are stowed, that is, assuming we're okay here, that's way too much uplift. Okay. Way too much. So we need to change our center of lift here, and we need to pull our wings back a little bit. Cool. So we're going to grab our aerodynamic and center of mass overlay. That was not what I wanted to do. I wanted to put that away and use the move tool. Aerodynamic overlay, please. Thank you. And just move that back slightly, like that. Let's see what that does. in theory, that should do the trick, I hope. We'll see. We will see. That'll just mean that it's less likely to want to nose up, right? That's all that'll mean. So we will try this again. And really, it feels like just this single pair of control surfaces is doing the trick for us. So that seems okay. Cool. It's still wanting to nose up. It's not as bad, but it still definitely likes to nose up. So that was an improvement, but we're going to have to pull it back a little further. We're not quite balanced on that front yet. So let's grab our move tool here. Aerodynamic overlay. Is it just me, or did that, like, not save? I don't know. We're going to move this back to being about here. Unfortunately, most of our mass is tied to our wings, so it moves most of our mass as well, but that's fine. Honestly, once this detaches here, we can see it'll get quite a bit better for us. So once we're done with that, that'll help, and our gimbaling should be a thing too. So we'll save that and launch it. And ideally, we may want to think about having our wings be detachable as well. The question is, how much of this are we planning to refly? If we were, like, how much are we planning to recover, right? Are we planning on coming back in, like, flying back in, spaceplane style? What's our recovery plan here? That's something we need to think about at some point. But we'll go ahead and throttle this up and see how it goes with the wings just a little bit further back. It's trying to pull off to the right here. But it's fairly controllable. Okay. We need to contract a Kerbal to add a ramp, like add a jump to this thing. Like they have on some aircraft carriers. Okay. Okay. It's still really liking to head up here. Okay. This needs to be moved out into its own. I thought I had done that, but there we go. Let's kick in these guys. Oh, I should have retracted our landing gear first. That's adding a lot of drag. Okay. Come here, you landing gear. There we go. This one didn't go. Cool. Okay. It's not amazingly controllable, I'll be honest. And I definitely didn't handle that takeoff amazingly well. That's for sure, too. Okay, we're bringing this thing back over. That could have been done a lot better. There's no doubt about that. We still need to figure out our procedures here, though. Okay. And this is fundamentally broken staging, which doesn't really help. Cool. So, oh my. I don't know why that wing detached. Oh. Okay. Jeb, you should probably... He tried to EVA. I didn't realize we were going that fast. 1493? That's actually pretty good. Huh. Well, we'll revert that back. And I'm going to go back to the hangar here. I want to fix the staging. That is something that we definitely need to do. That was almost an okay proof of concept flight there. We could use a little bit more verticality, for sure. But overall, that wasn't bad. So let's see here. These should fire at the same time. And then those detach, and then these detach. Yeah. Something kind of like that. Cool. Yeah, that should be fine. So let's try that again with doing this quasi-correctly this time. Emphasis on quasi-correctly. It's pretty tough to control when we have the SRBs attached but not running. We obviously want to burn them off as quickly as we can, but we ended up having a lot more speed than I thought we did. I don't know, maybe that was just because of the Kraken, or maybe it fell apart because we had that huge amount of speed. I'll have to keep a better eye on that. We may have to reinforce the connections here. May not be a bad idea. This is so much more controllable, though. So this is actually improving a lot. I like it. Okay. So let's bring this on over, and we will take off here. There we go. Trying to even us out because it likes to take off in a bit of an awkward way. But we'll get our landing gear retracted so that we don't waste too much on that. And we'll just rotate over here a little bit, or rather roll over a little bit, just to get us back on that 90-degree marker, that 90-degree heading. And let's bring it on back. Cool. And we'll be able to kick in our SRBs pretty soon here. We need to nose down a little bit. It doesn't want to. It wants to sit here. Maybe that's okay for the SRBs. Yeah, I think that's okay for the SRBs. I'm going to continue holding here until our apoapsis is maybe a little higher. No. I think we need the SRBs now. Cool. The SRBs try to nose up like this, and I think that's actually really, really good. So we're going to lose these SRBs in a moment. And they're gone. We're going to lose these SRBs in a moment. And the question is, what does that put our apoapsis up to? Not quite as high as I'd like. And that was a little risky there. Okay. Let's try firing our nuclear engines as well here. They are not effective at this altitude, but I want to see if that starts pushing our apoapsis out. The answer to that is not yet, but maybe soon. You can see that our nose is coming down. And I'm trying to fight that a little bit. We're very close here. We are very, very close. But that's the jet engines flaming out. They are now oxygen deprived. So this is pretty much the best we're going to do for right now. You can see us reaching apoapsis here in 5 seconds. 26 kilometers. That's really close. That is really, really close. Just a little bit more power, and we'll be there. Because we don't need that much more. That's the vast majority of what we need right there. So that all works very well at this point. The question now is, how can we go about eking out just that smidge more power? And the answer, I think, lies in the jet engines. Or it lies in ditching this solid fuel booster and going for liquid fueled instead, which I think is the better plan. So we're going to drop that, and we're going to go to a similarly sized and weighted liquid booster. So what is the weight of that thumper? 7.65 tons. The weight of this fuel tank is 4.5 tons. So we deposit that there. That is 4.5 tons. So we have another 2.5 tons to work with. We can definitely put on... Oh, this isn't in mirror mode. It should definitely be in mirror mode. Okay. We can definitely put on an engine that is probably going to end up being a swivel here. I think a swivel is the way to go. So we can put on a swivel like... if we can get that to snap. Like... There we go. Like so. What is the weight of a swivel? That is 1.5 tons. So we have one more ton to work with here, plus the nose cone, which will be the same for both of them. So what does 1 ton of fuel look like at this size? 2.25. Pretty much a T200. Like this. And then the nose cone. So that's the same amount of weight, but this should be much more efficient higher up in the atmosphere. So something like this. It's the same amount of weight, roughly the same size. A little smaller, but that's okay. And as far as the actual delta V of it goes, we need to have that fire. Yeah. And then we would burn this once this detaches, like so. And then just get rid of this stage, probably. Where's my minus button? There we go. Get rid of that stage, and then that detaches. And once that detaches, we should fire the nuclear engines, like that. Okay, so something along the lines of this. Now, how much delta V is actually in this stage? I don't know. I don't know. We'll find out if that will get us close. It should be pretty close, honestly. We were super close with the SRB, and having it be liquid fueled should be slightly more efficient. In theory. Hopefully it doesn't come back and take out our wing. But, we'll see. That's always one of the risks with designing a horizontal takeoff space vehicle like this. Like, it makes things a lot more awkward. Oh, this is not strutted together. We need to strut that. Absolutely. We can't have that liquid fueled engine wiggling around like that. So we're going to hop over here, and we are absolutely going to strut this together. There we go. That should do the trick. And I'm going to toss in a strut here. Oh, this is not in mirror mode. We should definitely mirror it. Okay, strut that together, and we're going to toss in a strut here, just to be safe, and a strut here, just to be safe. Okay. Let's go. We're very, very close here to getting into orbit. All we need to do is get high enough that our nuclear engines can take over. Once that happens, our nuclear engines can get us basically anywhere in the inner solar system. Although, back is maybe another story, depending on where we're going and how much delta V we burn on getting into orbit. And whether we can refuel or not. That's a question, too. Okay, so obviously we've got some cracking going on here. But it seems to have gotten under control. Let's double check our staging. Yes, 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 and yes. Okay, off we go. Helps if we throttle up, turns out. Okay. So we're going to take off here. Beautiful. And let's see if we can take off before we get to the end of the runway. My bet's on no. Hopefully this will work. It should be fine. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so we'll now retract our landing gear so we don't have that drag. There we go. Our angling looks good for now. And I want to just hold here for as long as we can. We could burn the SRBs, but I don't think that's a good call at this exact moment. I'm just tweaking our roll ever so slightly, and our nose is gently climbing up. I'm going to bring that down ever so slightly here. Okay. We're still really wanting to nose up, and that's due to the SRBs. We should go ahead and burn our SRBs now, I think. So we'll do so. And we want to go a bit more nose up here. We want to get vertical speed out of these SRBs as much as we can. There we go. So the SRBs will be detaching shortly, at which time we'll fire up our liquid-fueled rockets. There we go. And let's push our way as high as we can. I want more altitude. More altitude is what we want here. We want to be at like 45 degrees right now, ideally. Getting there with a space plane can be complicated, no doubt about that. And I'm trying to fix our roll a little bit here. Okay. There we go. So we'll hold here as long as we can and push our apoapsis up as high as possible. We are going to have flame out here fairly soon. And we've only got 15 seconds of liquid fuel left. Okay. Well, we can see that the atmosphere is getting thinner and thinner. This isn't as much speed as I was hoping for. Okay. Yeah, that didn't really solve the issue, although that was a nice detachment. I liked that. Yep, we just need more speed in the vertical category. More speed in the vertical category. So, I'm going to enlarge this tank and see how that feels. We're going to take this up to a T800, like so. And we're also going to... Oh, this isn't in symmetry mode. There we go. Cool. And we're going to toss in an extra strut over here just to be safe. There we go. Let's see how that goes. Can we lift off with that amount of fuel? I think the answer is yes. Our initial problem with liftoff is just nose up. Oh, I didn't check to see what that did to our mass distribution. I should have done that. So we're definitely going to revert here back and double check our mass distribution. Mass versus center of lift. That's absolutely something that we need to check. So what do we got here? It looks quasi-okay. Our center of mass is a bit low. That's expected. So far, that's not been a problem. But let's see how that goes here. Okay. Come on, KSP. You can do it. You can do it. There we go. Okay. Let's hope that Kraken doesn't do anything too major. We'll let it settle down. There we go. Throttle up, and off we go. And let's see if we can lift off like this. Straight down the runway right now, although that will, of course, change a bit. This thing likes to drift off to the right. While on the ground, anyway. And let's see how our lift goes here. Oof. Definitely slaloming around a bit there. But we're kinda good. Kinda. Let's retract our landing gear to get rid of that drag. It was barely a thing, right? Like, barely lifting off. But we did lift off in the end. So that's very, very good. We're trying to nose down here by default, but I'm bringing our nose up. And we're going to kick in the SRBs very soon. I want a lot of verticality out of them. There we go. SRBs are on, and we're trying to get as much vertical speed out of them as we can. Which isn't all that much. We're drifting nose down right now. There's nothing we can do about it, really. SRBs are off, and now the liquid fuel is firing. So now we're able to bring this up a little bit. Cool. Okay. This is kind of going all over right now. I'm trying to get it back under control. There we go. Let's see how much verticality that gets us. We've got quite a bit of time left in these liquid fuel boosters. So that's good. That's really, really good. And we're still using this high efficiency here. Eventually this liquid fuel will... Well, we're only about halfway done burning the liquid fuel. We've not had a fuel issue with that. So that's okay. But here we are now about halfway through these fuel tanks. So this is where we would have been with the previous one, except we would have had less weight. So our thrust to weight would have been a little higher. Our thrust to weight is still a little bit suspect here. And our overall speed isn't that good. So that's because of our thrust to weight. We're probably going to have to upgrade these swivels, is my current guess. Our thrust to weight just isn't high enough with this amount of fuel. So the swivels are going to need an upgrade. But overall, I think this is manageable. We've got 15 seconds of burn left here. And it's trying to nose up even further right now. I'm going to try to stop that. We just lost our afterburners. 3, 2, 1, and 0. Okay. Well, that was some awkward clippage there. So yeah, our issue at this point is thrust to weight in that kick stage, right? So now, at this point, we're functionally just gliding. And thrust to weight is our primary issue. Okay, so that is really good. We're making good progress here. So, we need something that's higher thrust to weight than these swivels. The question is, what do we go for? Vectors? Vectors will burn through this fuel really fast. But it is very high thrust to weight. That's for sure. So we can do 1.25 meter vectors. If we do that, we're going to have 25 seconds of burn, but it's going to be a huge thrust to weight ratio. And that is honestly, I think, for the best. That does mean that we'd be able to carry more fuel here if we wanted to. So, let's see how this goes. That thrust to weight ratio was just too low with the swivels, so vectors will be much higher thrust to weight ratio, perhaps too high. We may need to cut down the vector thrust, and we'll see if we need to do that, but for right now, that might be required. We'll see. The vector thrust might be too high in that it might push our nose too much. It also might be too high in that it just wastes too much to air resistance. We'll see. We're going to try it at full thrust and see how it feels. But we're at this point incredibly close to getting this thing spaceborne. Okay. Still relatively controllable down the runway, at least until we get up to much higher speeds like this. And then we start fishtailing a little bit. Cool. Ooh, okay. So, I think the vectors are a little heavier, but I think overall that was pilot error. I believe I messed that one up. Potentially. Now, we're barely lifting off, right? That's definitely truth. But one thing we may want to do is kick in the SRBs the moment we get off the pad there. Oh, this Kraken. Can you stop? Please? It usually stops after a bit. Well, let's see if we can get going here. Cool. So I think I'm going to try kicking in the SRBs immediately off of the runway. So we take off with the jet engine, and then we kick in the SRBs to get us the altitude that we need. This Kraken is not going to help, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll try not doing that this time and see if that was in fact pilot error. Okay. Yeah, we're just ever so slightly too heavy for that. So, I think we have to use the SRBs for takeoff assist or lose a little bit of weight. What is the weight of the vectors? Let's check here. Engines. The vector is 4 tons. Okay. What weight can we trim off of this then? No, I think we're better off to use the SRBs the moment we leave the runway. I think that's much better off. We need to use them at sea level anyway, right? So using them that way is probably for the best. So we do that and attempt to vector up as much as possible off of the runway. I'm pretty sure that's what we do here. We're definitely basically at the weight limit of this thing. We have to take this off basically perfectly in order for it to actually take off. Ah, this Kraken. Can we not, Mr. Kraken? Like, seriously, can we not? Okay. I think it's getting a little bit better, maybe. But let's head on down here. Cool. So we're going to kick in the SRBs when we're almost to the edge of the runway, is the way I'm going to do this. So right about now. Well, that didn't help us get any altitude. We lost all of our underslung stuff, and that definitely didn't help. So we've got some weight to trim off of this. I think that's very clear at this point. The vectors will definitely be more thrust to weight, but we need more lift, really. is what we need here. Let's see what we've got for potentially more lift. We could put like another set of wings up here, like a small set. That might not be the worst idea. Hilariously, some big spaceplane tail fins. That might not be bad, actually. What if we were to do something kind of like this? What does that do to our center of lift versus center of mass? It moves it too far forward. So really what we'd need to do is we would need to move this quite a lot forward, like this. And then these would instead be moved to be back here. Kind of like that, except we need the wings even further forward. Or actually, we need them wings to be like right here, clipping in awkwardly. Potentially here. That might be okay. I don't know what the KSP engine does for inline wings like that. I know inline engines are going to be blocked, but we can see if that works. A little bit more lift would not go awry here. We can angle those wings if we have to. But overall, that might do the trick. We'll see. It's a very Kerbal solution. There's no doubt about that. But let's see how that works. Not sure how the engine will deal with that. And we're probably going to have the Kraken here. Wait. That's no Kraken. Cool. So no Kraken there. That does give us an additional control surface on each side as well. So that's not the worst thing either. Let's see how this goes for our lift. We're certainly a little bit slower on the runway, I think. But if we have the lift, it doesn't matter. Right? We could try to make this into like a biplane. But let's see. That's a good nose up. Okay. We've got the wing. Sounds good. So we're going to try to make our way over here to lifting our nose up a lot. Because we need all the altitude that we can get our hands on, right? So at this point, we're going to kick in our SRBs. And we're going to try to hang out somewhere over... Well, we need to kill this roll. Somewhere over here. Okay. We have a big roll built up here. That roll is not helpful, and I forgot to retract our landing gear. That's definitely something that needs to happen, and should have happened before I kicked in the SRBs. Okay, so those vectors are online now. And they're going to eat through this fuel very quickly. The question is, are we losing too much of the vector power to air resistance here? We'll see. So that's the vectors gone. Did we lose anything important there? No. Interesting. Interesting. That is... Okay, so these are currently flamed out. Air combustion has failed. We're not surprised about that. We need to ditch this now. And there goes that weight. At this point, we just want to be locked to prograde. So we can see our altitude is much, much higher. I think that we did lose... I'm not sure what's going on here. I think that's just a visual bug. But I think that we did lose a little bit too much to our air resistance, like I said. I think that's definitely a thing. And we should definitely have some solar panels on this. Does this have a reaction wheel? It does. Okay. So that should be reasonably fine. So I think we need to turn down the thrust to weight on our vectors a little bit and let those run longer, which will just overall be better. And that will mean that we activate the atomic rocket motors, in theory, at a higher altitude. Yeah. This is getting very, very close here. Now, we just don't quite have enough here, but I think that pretty much all boils down at this point to the vectors burning so much air resistance. So, I'd like to thrust limit this stage down to being about 1.6. So that's like 50% thrust. Yeah, 50% thrust should do the trick. That also means that our jet engines will run longer and there will be less wasted fuel there. And keep in mind that that last attempt, I fired the hammers with the landing gear still out. So we lost a lot to drag there as well. So we'll go ahead and save that and we'll try this again. This is incredibly close at this point. Man, am I ever bad at space planes. There's no doubt about that. I'm really, really bad at space planes. But, I mean, this is going okay at this point. Okay, KSB. Do we have a Kraken? Ladies and gentlemen, we have a Kraken. Let's try that again. I don't know why the wings are crackening so much, but it's a little bit obnoxious. No doubt about that. Kraken? Yeah. Kraken in exactly the same way there. So is that just going to be a thing? We didn't change anything that should cause that to consistently kraken. Previously, it's only krakened once, and then I restarted it, and it was fine. Well, let's see. Kraken? It's krakening, but it's not breaking this. Okay, we're good. No major kraken this time. So let's throttle up, and we are out of here. We're going to try to make it to space this time. And if we make it to space, we're going into orbit. Cool. So we're just heading down the runway right now, putting everything into horizontal speed. I'm not going to start lifting up until we break 100 meters per second, I think. Although we will start slaloming around a little bit. Okay. Starting to try to lift up here. Cool. There we go. We'll hold here while we retract our landing gear and no longer have to deal with all that drag. There we go. That was a clean takeoff. I like it. We're going to start pitching up. And SRB will kick in now. Beautiful. I've rolled us over a little bit here in hopes that we pull over towards the 90-degree marker. And it is somewhat working. Okay, SRBs are out of here. The vectors are firing at 50% thrust. Cool. So we'll hold it around here for now, I guess. I don't really like where we're rolled at, but that'll do. So the vectors are firing here. They've got about 25 seconds of thrust left. Their goal is to push us through the majority of the atmosphere. Now, last time they pushed us through a huge chunk of the atmosphere, to be sure. But we need to fine-tune the thrust-to-weight ratio here because we had an issue last time where we were having way too much air resistance. Let's see how that's going this time. 5 more seconds of thrust in the vectors. And the vectors are out of here. Okay. So the turbofans are gonna shut down here pretty soon. You can see that they're losing a lot of efficiency. They're only burning about half of their fuel. So that's a weight savings that we could make. For sure. We could cut down the fuel here down to 90, and that should be just fine. At this point, we want to simply lock to prograde. There we go. And this is about the same as what we had previously. Yeah, it's about the same. We can see our orbital velocity is increasing here. Our surface velocity is decreasing. But our horizontal speed is increasing, hilariously. Our vertical speed is not so great. So we can see that we're going to be at our apoapsis here in about 25 seconds. It's going to be a little longer than that, for sure. But we're just not quite fast enough here. So, that weight savings that I talked about is definitely a thing. We can go back to the spaceplane hangar and save ourselves... How much weight is that going to be? It's going to be quite a bit, but it's liquid fuel only, no oxidizer. So we're going to come down over here and we're going to check in here. We're currently at about 70 tons. So if we drop this down to 90, that does save us about a ton. Well, that will push us quite a ways further. That little bit of weight savings is big. Otherwise, this all seems okay. I wouldn't mind having more fuel in these tanks. One thing that we could do is have a couple of strap-on fuel tanks here and here that feed into here and then detach as an option. I don't know how good of an option it is because of concerns about weight and concerns about aerodynamic lift positions. We can try it, though. So what that would end up looking like is we'd essentially just duplicate this with mirror on. We'd position it here, and then we'd duplicate it again. Not the whole wing, just this. Not that. Ah, wrong button. No, OBS, I don't want to open settings. Okay. We want to duplicate this, the radial decoupler. We put that here, and then we don't have it angled like that, that's for sure. Let's get rid of that, and both of them are actually incorrectly angled. We'll have to fix the angling on them. That's okay. I want this to snap. We don't need this to be at any specific angle, but we do need it to be reasonably flat here. That is deeply unhelpful with the snapping. Okay, so we will unsnap that, and we will have this go about like that. Now, obviously, we don't need the vectors. These do not need to be here. So we do that. That's a small weight savings. Do we want the vectors to be in the center, in closer, or out to the edge? I think in center is better. Or in closer is better. I'm not 100% on that, but that's just my gut feeling. So from there, we can run an external fuel duct in like this, and then another external fuel duct in like this. That should draw from these tanks first, then these tanks, then these tanks. In theory. Unexpected mark stack overflow. KSP just crashed on me. Okay. Well, that's exciting. Cool. Thanks for that, KSP. So, the last time we saved this was before we started these alterations. Okay. Well, we know what we're going to do here. So we should be able to reproduce it quite quickly. It shouldn't be a huge problem, in theory. KSP crashing there was exciting, but it seems like KSP needs to be restarted in these streams periodically. I don't know. It's obnoxious and not great. That's for sure. I don't have this problem in the series because I play in like half-hour increments, right? So I restart KSP quite frequently. But in these streams, it's a little bit of a different story. I don't know. I might have to try to look for a mod for fixing that or something. I'll have to think about that. Regardless, we'll be back in here in a moment, and we'll get this plane into space. That's for sure. Assuming it takes off with the tri-tank, which is maybe a bit of a big assumption. Assuming it takes off with the tri-tank, that should easily get us there. And we're probably going to have to be a little bit higher than 50% on the vectors, but we should have plenty of thrust-to-weight headroom to make that happen. But what we did learn is that it's certainly not particularly impactful to have the thrust-to-weight be where we had it here. Like, we're not losing all that much currently to atmospheric drag. So that is something to think about too. Okay, so with KSP restarted here, we should be able to load in reasonably quickly. And having it just randomly crash in the VAB like that, that's really weird, right? Like, that's really, really weird. Well, let's get this in here and hop back into the spaceplane hangar. We know what changes we want to make here. So this should be reasonably swift. The autosave chip should be the last version, yes, and we need to drop this down to 90 fuel. And then we wanted to duplicate this guy right here, and we wanted to place it in... snapping is on. We want to place it in somewhere around here, and then we want to duplicate it again and put it in somewhere around here. Now we're going to have to change the rotation on these. Now, snapping isn't going to be very effective, so we're going to have to change the rotation a bit manually, like so. And then, like so. We do not need all of these engines, so we remove these engines here. And then we run the fuel line in, like so. And then we would need to run our staging. Oh, this doesn't have mirroring on. It didn't turn on the mirroring. Okay. Let's replace that one and replace that one. There. That's correct. And then we'll run the fuel line in like that. Cool. Okay. So let's check our staging here. Our staging is going to be maybe a little bit awkward. Yes, that's all correct. And then we want to detach the outer ones. And then we want to detach the inner ones, or the center ones. And then the inner ones, like that. Okay. Now the question is, will this take off? And we also need to check in on our thrust to weight here. Yeah, that's definitely too low. So we want to bump this up to like 75% thrust. Even higher. 85. Honestly, 100% thrust is probably okay. Cool. So we'll do something like that. Now we need to check our, if I can get rid of that. We need to check our center of mass versus our aerodynamic overlay. We'll see how that goes. I'm not convinced that this is good. We'll see how it feels. If it doesn't handle well off of the runway, then we'll need to adjust that. That's what we'll need to focus on. But for now, we'll see how it feels. This is a very iterative process. Cool. Okay, do we have a Kraken? We've got a Kraken. Oh, and even though these don't have thrust, they... Hang on. Oh, this one isn't correctly connected. Okay, gotcha. So we'll redo the strutting here. It's a little bit horrific. We're going to put in a strut, like, from underneath, ideally. So, like, from here, and then if we can get moved over to, like, here. Cool. We'll do the same thing here. Of course, symmetry isn't on. Okay, symmetry, you can be on. And then we'll do something kind of like that. And then something kind of like that. And then finally something kind of like that. Cool. We'll need to change these guys as well. They don't actually seem to do anything as well as far as preventing the Kraken, so we can honestly just do a little bit of weight savings there. It doesn't help. So we may as well have the weight savings. Cool. Let's see how that goes with the Kraken. And we'll see if we can get off of the runway. We've got a lot more weight, and we may not have enough lift to get off the runway. But with the spaceplane tail fins, I'm hoping that we have enough lift. Now the question is, how's that Kraken? Honestly, I think the struts may have helped. Well, let's see how this goes. I'm not expecting great things from this particular iteration. If we get this successfully in the air, this will be great. But look at this wiggle here. That is very non-great. I think these struts do need to be replaced. And we'll see about getting this thing off the pad. Beautiful. We're moving at about 72 meters per second. We'll see if the wings detach here, and if we're able to nose up. Or if we nose up too hard. That wasn't enough of a nose up. Okay, so we clearly need a little bit more lift here, and that's fine. So, here's what we're going to do. We are going to move these guys forward a little bit, and that'll move most of our mass with it. And we'll move that up to about here. Cool. And then I'm going to think about moving this forward as well to about here. Kind of like this. So we definitely didn't have enough mass, or rather enough lift there. And I'm not shocked about that. One thing we can do is we can add some lift that is intended to go away by adding in some small amount of a lifting surface over something like a Delta Deluxe winglet, but that's really just a control surface. We could put like Delta wings on here. As a quasi-lifting surface there. I don't like this angling. There, that should be better. Yes. Much better. Cool. So that'll give us a little bit more lift, but that will not give us too much weight later on. So that'll detach out pretty quickly. We'll see how that ends up going there. But I do want to add these struts back in. I think that those are quite important. They really did help. I'm going to add them in on the bottom as well. So we're going to put struts in here. Oh, hello. We're going to put struts in here and here. Cool. So that should, hopefully, help keep the Kraken under control. Beautiful. So let's see if we can get this thing lifted up. No major crack in there. Throttling up. And let's see about getting this thing off the runway. Hopefully with this additional lift over here, that'll do the trick. It looks really stupid, I'm not gonna lie. But hopefully that'll do the trick. Okay. Our speed is not great, but we have a lot of mass here. There's no doubt about it. A whole lot of mass. And let's see how this goes. Hey! It's real heavy. It's real heavy, but it works. We're going to get rid of our landing gear. We're going to retract all of that. Cool. That'll get rid of a lot of drag here. And we're going to kick in our SRBs here. We need a lot more speed. I'm trying to pull up, but it's exciting. It's very exciting. We're already almost out of our jet fuel as well, which was unexpected. Okay. Whoa! That is some exciting yaw. Okay, we have way too much yaw authority. No doubt about that. Let's try to make it over towards prograde here. Way too much yaw. So that's interesting. We definitely need a little bit more power. Not a lot, but a little bit more power on takeoff. I think that we should actually use our SRBs as takeoff assist at this point. So what we would do here is we would fire the SRBs at the same time here and use them to help us accelerate. So something kind of like this. It was maybe a little too early on the SRBs. But something like that. We're right at the limits of what this airframe can support, it seems. But that yaw was insane. Absolutely insane. Oh, this is not set up to do this. Yeah, that was a staging issue. So we're going to revert that back, and I'm going to fix the staging here. So, actually, the staging is fine. I was just using the plane in a way that I didn't intend it to be used, because we fired up the vectors sooner than intended there. Okay, so we're going to use this to go down the pad a little bit. And actually, I'm going to take them out of afterburning mode. There we go. Now that we should have a good long time, and afterburning mode doesn't actually add all that much to our capabilities here, I want to see if we can take off without afterburning mode. Let's see. We're doing reasonably okay on our acceleration. The moment we're off the ground, I want to hit the SRBs, although it wants to push our nose down a little bit when we do that. So let's see how this ends up going. We're definitely moving slower without afterburners. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. That's too slow without the afterburners. However, I think with the afterburners, we end up burning too much fuel. So we need to kick in the SRBs slightly earlier is what needs to happen there. That'll be fine. This thing is such a ridiculous Franken creature. Okay, so we've got the afterburners on here. I'm going to turn them off. And we're going to work without the afterburners. We'll kick in the afterburners once we're in flight after the SRBs are gone. Is the way that we'll do that. Okay. And after we retract our landing gear. Cool. So we're going to kick in our SRBs fairly soon here. We just want to make our way most of the way down this pad in our efficient engine mode. I keep calling it a pad. It's a runway. We just want to bring it most of the way down the runway in this efficient mode. And I think once we get to these lines here, we'll kick in the SRBs for the big acceleration kick. Like this. Oh, that's so close. It wasn't quite enough speed. Okay, we're really close here. I'm going to revert this back, and I'm going to modify our lifting surface that we're using here. I'm going to use another big spaceplane tail fin. So we're going to do something like this. Once again, it's ridiculous looking. And that's not the direction I want it to go. Okay. Something kind of like that. That'll give us another control surface to lift off with, and I think even more lifting surface. I want to check in on that real quick. What is the lifting power of the Delta Wing? Relative wing area of 2 versus a big spaceplane tail fin, which is 3.49. So yeah, that'll be more lift and another control surface. And the question is, when do we kick in the SRBs? I think that when we kick them in was fine. We just need that extra little boost. And I don't want to be in afterburner mode at this point. I want to lift off outside of afterburner mode because that's functionally free as far as the... Well, actually, we can try lifting off outside of afterburner mode without the SRBs with this extra lifting surface. We can see how that goes. These are inverted. Okay. That's unhelpful. They're inverted from all of the others. All of the other control surfaces. Cool. That's really not going to help us. And we can't change them because it doesn't actually work. So we're going to have to think about how we want to fix that. But I want to see if we can lift off with just this lifting surface, right? So I'm going to go straight down. I'm not going to try to pull up until we are basically at the end of the pad. I just want to get as much speed as we can. It's pretty good on the speed, actually. Okay. Yeah. I think that'll work if we don't have that inverted lifting surface. Or inverted control surface. So how do we fix that? I don't know, honestly. I haven't found a way to do it. If it's inverted, it just seems to break. Now, one thing we could try to do is put them in, like, here? Well, we could try to just replace it. Like that. Another thing we could do is put it in like this. That would be really weird. I don't know how helpful that would be. Okay, let's see if this is still inverted. Now that we've taken it out and replaced it. It is. It's still inverted. And it just completely ignores everything that we do here. We could... Oh, even if we... Okay, we could just deactivate its control surface and see if that would work. So let's do that. Oh, afterburners are on. Let's turn those off. There we go. And we're just going to go straight down the pad, as straight as we can, and build up as much speed as possible. With this disabled, we'll see how that goes. Okay, 50 meters per second. We're aiming for about 80 when we reach the end here. That's the goal. We'll see what we're at. This is about 70. $75. Is it enough? No. Okay, we definitely need a little bit more power there. There's no doubt about that. So I think we have to enable our afterburners. The only other question is, can we just go to a more powerful jet engine? That might be a better bet. So if we were to do that, let's see. This is a J404. Is there a more powerful one? Let's see here. 130 kilonewton stationary. I think the Whiplash is better. Yeah, the Whiplash is better. So we could put on a Whiplash instead. Like that. Cool. And I wonder how quickly it'll burn through that. 24 seconds it'll burn through that fuel. That's not a lot. We're definitely going to turn the fuel back up in there if we're going to go to a Whiplash. Let's see how that goes. I'd love to greed the SRBs here. If we can't get away with that, then that's fine. Cool. So, let's see how it goes with the Whiplashes. We will certainly have higher thrust to weight here on the runway. Oh. I'm dumb. We'll revert that back to the launch. We need to move things around. Changing that messed up our staging. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. So we'll load this in. Cool. And where did it put this? Here. Awkward place to put it, but sure. Okay. So then those fire, then that, then the outside, center, and then the inside. Yes, this is all correct now. Cool. So we're going to throttle up here. That's not a lot of acceleration, I'll be honest. But it is quite a lot of burn time. So that's good. And yeah, our max speed is certainly going to be higher. There's no doubt about that. This is not going down on a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay. We're going to start looking to take off here. Oh, boy. Okay. We need to make that inactive on pitch. Cool. Okay, so we're going to try to take off here, and we're going much faster. Hey! Cool. So we can now drop our, or rather, we can retract our landing gear. There we go. How are we doing on this fuel in reality? Oh, that's pretty good, actually. And we're going to look to pitch up here. We want to get as much altitude as we can. We're going to kick in our SRBs now. Now it wants to pitch down with the SRBs. Are we oxygen deprived here? We're actually going down right now, which is non-great. But we should start going back up now. There we go. So I don't think we're oxygen deprived. Okay. Ah! That yaw issue. Like, that's the opposite direction that I'm telling it to yaw, too. I think it has to do with these wings. Okay, let's bring that back to the to the spaceplane hangar here. And here's the idea. A, do we even need this lift? I think so, seeing what we had, but I'm going to completely turn off any control surfaces here because this is inverted from everything else and I can't get it to flip around. None of this works. So there's that. Otherwise, that was a pretty successful test. When the vectors kicked in, I think they were far too gimbally. I'm going to bring them down to like 10% on their gimbal. But that was pretty good. Honestly, I feel like the hammers are kind of not helpful. I feel like they don't help us much. So I'm thinking about perhaps simply ditching them and running it like this. That means our takeoff weight will be much lower. And I don't feel like they added a lot, honestly. The whiplashes should be more than enough because we could lift off with them idle. So I think we just ditch them and save the weight. All they got us was a little bit of horizontal speed, and I don't feel like that really helps. So, let's throttle this up. Really? Okay. That is awkward. It changed around all of our staging again. Sure. So, we'll revert this back and get this done. So, this is, of course, the vectors here. We want the whiplashes in this stage. So we want to do whiplashes, and then we fire up the vectors whenever we're ready, and then we detach these tanks, yes, and that's all good. So we'll go ahead and launch that. Fantastic. This thing is so ridiculous looking. Like, I'm looking at it in the stream preview here, and I'm just like... It's mostly the tail fin on the front section there, but we just needed the extra lift. I wonder if that's necessary without the SRBs, though. We might be able to get away with not having that. But let's go ahead and fire up our whiplashes here. They take a little while to spin up. But once they do, it's all good. Helps if we throttle up. That's definitely something that will help. Okay. I'm watching this guy wiggle around, but it is strutted in. Interesting. Okay. So we're definitely going to be able to take off here. No doubt about it. Will we be able to take off before we get to the end of the runway? Probably not, is the answer. Probably not. So, there we go. Hopefully. Really? That's interesting, because we had less weight there. I'm guessing... Oh, I know what it was. We didn't adjust our mass to lift. Our mass to lift point. Because our mass would have moved forward from getting rid of those SRBs, and we didn't adjust that. That's what the problem was there. Yup. So we need to move our lift point forward a little bit here. So it needs to be... Actually, we'll probably be better off moving this one. About like that. And then bringing this guy forward, maybe just a smidge, but really it's getting this guy forward. That's going to help. Okay, we'll see how that works. Our lifting point had drifted too far back with that modification. So that makes a lot of sense. No problem there. We'll put this back out. We shouldn't have modified the staging, so that should be fine. Cool. And let's go. Definitely takes a little while for these engines to spin up. But once they do, they're very effective. And most of our mass is in these wings, so moving the wings doesn't generally help us all that much, which is kind of awkward. Okay. So once we get up here, we'll need to pull up a little bit. Right about now, I'll start pulling up. Man, that's close. But we do manage to take off. We'll retract this landing gear and this landing gear. And we hit the wall. We just didn't quite have enough lift there. And we just need to continue to adjust that position, I guess. So we're going to need to detach these, put it back into mirror mode, and we're going to need to move this up. So we need the center of mass in the aerodynamic overlay here. And that's getting really far up there. Basically, all of the mass is in these wings, right? So that's the core issue there. But we can certainly have it be like here. And then we could even double up these spaceplane tail fins. That pulls it back further. That's right. What if we were to put it up? What? Why would that be the center of lift now? I'm sorry, I don't feel like that's correct. Yeah, that's more like it. So you can see, well, even that's not more like it. Why would it be that far back? Hang on, this doesn't seem right. Okay, that's more like it. We've got a bit of a bug going on there, but sure. Now, if we were to put it here, you can see that our lifting force is above our center of mass. That's just because we have so much mass down here. We can try this. It's becoming a monstrosity. There's no doubt about that. Let's see how it goes. And let's also see if these control surfaces are inverted or not. Because that's a problem we've been having, where control surfaces are inverted and then they're just ignoring our orders to invert. So we'll see if we have to turn off those control surfaces or not and just use this as a lifting surface. Yeah, see, that's inverted. It's the same thing with these. If we turn this back on, the front ones are inverted from the back ones. And if we invert them here, or if we change the deploy angle, they just ignore it. It doesn't change anything. So that's exciting. We're going to have to turn off our control surfaces here, here, and here. There we go. And we'll see how badly this thing works. My guess, it's not going to work well at all. But we'll see. If we're able to lift off like this, then that's amazing. And I question things. A lot of things. We should not have any roll authority here. There we go. Cool. We're just using these as lifting surfaces for the time being. And with that extra lift, do we have enough to actually lift off before we get to the edge of the runway? We'll find out. That's a negatory, but that's okay. Whoa, okay. So that's in the... we need to move the center of lift back slightly then. The center of lift is slightly too far forward. Not a lot too far forward. So looking at this, we then need to move this guy back to be about here. Now this is a lot of wasted weight, right? This is going to be useless, as is this in space. And we don't need this lift once this weight is gone. So here's what I'm thinking about doing. I'm thinking about actually putting this over here. Or something like that. Maybe not quite this guy. I don't think we quite need that much lift. Or rather, that much control surface. Because clearly our control surfaces down here aren't working, right? So we need something with comparable lifting surface. So this is 3.5 wing area. But we need it without control surfaces, ideally. I mean, there's the aeroplane main wing. That's way too much. There's the airplane tail fin. That's not really enough. The swept wings would be interesting. A potential option. It's not quite as much, but it's an interesting option for sure. It was like 3.5 was the wing area. Right? Yeah, 3.5. That's a lot of wing area. We could theoretically think about putting like swept wings on this side. Like that. I don't know if that's actually going to block this air intake, but it might. It's probably not the greatest of concepts. I'd like to have it down here, right? Another thing we could do... Relative wing area of 5. I mean, it's the wrong angle. That would be more lift without control surfaces. It could theoretically work. We need a nose cone over here. There we go. Now there are 2 nose cones here. There we go. And that does drop our center of lift a little bit. Now, is this too far? Maybe. We'll have to see how it feels. That's the only way. We have to feel it. Other people might know. I don't. I have to feel it out. So let's see how we do here. This is a very ridiculous concept, for the record. This is perhaps one of the silliest things I've ever made in KSP. Okay. Let's throttle it up, and let's go. Cool. So if we can get this thing off the ground, we should be good, in theory. In theory. If we can get it off the ground and controllable in the air. But turning down the gimbal on this should help a lot. And it's possible that we have too much gimbal in this as well. We'll see how that goes. We should start trying to pull up at this point. How are we doing? Oh, it's so close. It's so close, but we don't quite have what we need. Okay, maybe control surfaces on the big delta wing out here. So control surfaces on here. I'd prefer not to carry this weight after we get rid of this. That'd be my preference. Okay. So something kind of like that might give us the control that we need for that takeoff. We just need a little bit more lift, right? So that would be the idea. We'll try it. I'm so bad at space planes. Cool. Okay, so we'll load this on in here. There we go. And let's go. I'm going to try just lifting off the whole way. And we'll see how it feels with these extra control surfaces. Another thing we might want to do is increase our authority on them. That is another option. But let's see how this goes. Down the runway we go. We're just so close to getting this off the ground with the added fuel. So close. How's this? Nope, not quite enough. Man, it's so close. We need more lift. There's no way around it. We need more lift. So, I'm going to have to go back to this plan. Much as I dislike it, it'll add additional lift, and we'll see if this is inverted or not. I'm also going to increase the control authority on all of these. We'll see if this one is inverted or not from the others. It shouldn't be, but it probably will be. But with that additional lift, hopefully that'll get us what we need. I don't want to carry that additional mass, though. So, I'm a little bit upset about it, but it's fine. It's fine. We'll get more lifting surface here. And let's load this on in. It is inverted. Okay. So we're going to have to disable that and use this tail fin just as a lifting surface. Which does make me a little sad, but here we are. With this ridiculous thing. This thing is so ridiculous. I love it. It's one of the most Kerbal things I've ever built. Now let's see if we can get it off the runway. We've got a little extra lift. We've got a little bit more control authority. What we don't have is more speed, which may end up being what we need. But honestly, I think we're okay on the speed front. I don't think that's the problem. It might be. $70 meters per second here. Maybe it is speed. Okay. So that's too much. I'm not sure if that was me, though, or if that was the lifting position. Because I was just pulling hard up there because of the previous stuff, right? The previous ones where it just wouldn't pull up. So I'm not sure if that was me pulling up too hard or if that was the lifting position. We need to try it again and find out. This, of course, needs to be turned off. There we go. And we're going to get as much speed as we can. And if we need to move this wing back, we can. That's not the end of the world. We could also attach it out here. That might be kind of funny. Okay. Well, let's go. Let's see if we make it off the runway this time. That may have been pilot error, or it may have been needing to move where our lifting position is. We're definitely moving faster this time, so that's great. It's the lifting position. Okay. So now we know it's the lifting position. We can go back to the spaceplane hangar here and adjust that position. We need to move back this wing for sure. So let's take a look at our lifting position here and how much can we get away with moving this back. Honestly, here's probably fine. So let's do that. Oh, I should have turned off the control surfaces in-game there, or rather in the VAB there. That's something I should have done. Okay. We're getting incredibly close here. We have the power. We have the lift. Now we just need to dial in that position, and I think it's good. So we will turn this off now, and off we go. Accelerating down the pad as quickly as we can. These horizontal takeoffs for space are so much more complicated than vertical takeoffs. It's insane. Okay, we're hitting about 70 meters per second here. We're hitting 80. At this point, I'm pulling up. Okay, yep, that's much better. That's fantastic. That's really good, actually. So you can see here we're slowing down. That's fine. We just need to even this out a little bit. There we go. Now we're speeding up. So I want to burn this for a little while here and get ourselves a little bit more speed, but more importantly, just work up our apoapsis here and bring the speed up a decent amount before we end up kicking in our vectors. Now I can see here that we need to roll a little bit. So I'm working on that. I don't want to roll too much, and that's affecting our pitch quite a bit. There we go. It likes to even out, which is a good thing ultimately, but we need to get more altitude here. So we're going to work on that. And let's even out our roll. Cool. There we go. So we can kick in our vectors very soon here. I'm going to pitch way up, and we're going to kick in our vectors. So off we go vertically. Or not really vertically, but at like 45 degrees. So we're going to burn out this stage first, and this is going to be a lot of weight that goes away. I'm a little concerned about this flying into our wing and blowing out the wing. We'll see what happens with that. Yeah, that happened a little bit. To be sure. I'm trying to correct our attitude a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to walk us to prograde for the time being. And we'll see. Oh, we're flipping. We're certainly flipping. Okay. We'll try to get this dealt with, but we pitched up too high there. And at this point, we're just spinning. But I think it's kind of getting under control. Kind of. Kind of. Very kind of. Okay. So this engine is burned out, and we're now flamed out here as well. So obviously that tumble pretty much put an end to our hope of that particular launch. So we just need to get it more under control. The problem there was we ended up tipping too far up, which caused us to lose control. And a big part of it was the detachment of this wing. That's a big, big part of it. Let's see if we can get that a little bit better this time. But that's the overall plan there, and we were very close to getting to where we needed to be. That was incredibly close there. We just need to not get taken out like that. I think part of it was that I locked to program. I think that was a problem. Okay, so let's make our way down the runway here. Once we reach 80 meters per second, I will start pulling up. There we go. And let's turn on over this way. Cool. There we go. That was a nice takeoff. I like it. We'll retract our landing gear to get rid of the drag. Cool. And we can kick in. Okay. So when that kicks in, it moves a lot, even with the strut. So I think we need multiple struts to make that be a little bit less violent. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to grab this strut in mirror mode, and we're going to go to here. And then we're going to grab a second strut, and we're going to go to here. Because this moves a lot when we kick in the vector engine. So that should help it stay a lot more firm. We'll try that. I'm hoping that that will do the trick. Fingers crossed. Because that movement is not good for us. Not good for us at all. Come on, KSP. You can do it. You can load on in. Okay. So off we go again. Any one of these flights could be the one that gets us into orbit. And of course, we need to turn that off. Cool. So we'll take off here. We are at about 65 meters per second here. We'll start pulling up pretty soon. Really, I should pull up right at the end because we're not going to take off beforehand. There we go. Cool. We will get rid of our landing gear. And we will start to pull up here. And hang out right around here. Kicking in. Okay. So, we clearly do need the gimbal here. Yeah, I think that's clear. So we'll revert that back to the spaceplane hangar. We've got a couple more toggles to do. So the reason that that's pulling us up so sharply, which in fact is something that we want it to do, but the reason that it's pulling us up so sharply is because it's underslung. So we might want to end up angling this a little bit, but just turning the gimbal up will help that a lot. And I also wanted to come in here to turn this off so I didn't have to remember to do that every time. So let's see how it feels with the gimbal up. And if this isn't enough, then we'll have to angle it down ever so slightly to try to counteract that force. We want it to pull us up a little bit, but not very much. It's pulling us up way too much right now because it's underslung. So that's fine. So from here, this could very much be it. It's a very slow acceleration, but once we get going, we're going very nicely. Also, I kind of question the physics behind this thing, but, you know, it is Kerbal. It is what it is. If it's not flying, throw on more wings and boosters. That's the rule. Okay, so we'll get our takeoff here. That's going quite well at this point. Our only real problem area right now is when we kick on the booster here. We're getting too much pitch up. Okay. We will ditch the landing gear. Not really ditch the landing gear, but we'll retract the landing gear. There we go. And moving our way up to 45 degrees. Kicking in the booster. That helped. Actually, hang on a moment. Hang on a moment. That's pretty good. Now it's not holding steady here, which I don't love. But that's a lot of verticality. This is going to be a problem, potentially. Yep. I was afraid of that. That detachment is a big issue. So I'd like to revert that back, and we'll think about how we want to do that. We need something that'll give us more distance with this detachment, right? Because this coming back and hitting the wing and hitting this over here, that's going to be a problem for a while. We might want to use something along the lines of, because we're using this radial decoupler right now, we could use something like this, which has much higher radial, or much higher ejection force, plus it also has a larger standoff. So that would be putting this on kind of like that. It's very big, no doubt about it. And then this needs to be like reversed. But it would be something kind of like that. We'd change the positioning slightly. Kind of like this. Yeah, that's approximately correct. So it would have more ejection force, and it would be just by default a little bit lower and further. Let's see how that goes. Because that detachment is going to cause us issues for a while. More ejection force would be good. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, come on, KSP. You can load. I have faith. There we go. Okay. Checking to see clearance. It looks okay. And yeah, that'll give us a lot more space and more ejection force going away from the plane, which will hopefully buy us the time that we need. Okay. Well, let's do it. Meters per second. And there we go. A nice takeoff. As is often the case, honestly. Oh, those big-ass Delta wings can have fuel? Hilarious. Not that we can really use it from that position. We'd have to run a line. But, yeah, that's pretty funny, actually. So we should kick in our liquid booster anytime now. Yeah, this is fine. Oh, wow. Not sure what that was. It was like we hit something. Okay. So we'll position here. It's not pulling from here, despite the fact that there's a fuel line connected. Okay, I'm not sure why that's the case. But it's not pulling here. We'll have to rerun the fuel line. I'm guessing that's a Kerbal issue. Cool. Well, we'll see how much we get done here. How much distance, specifically. This is not bad. Considering... Oh, it is pulling it now. Okay. That's weird. That's really weird that it pulled it like that. And it was when we ran out of, not jet fuel, but when we lost our air intake there, that we started this tumble. So I think the answer to that is we need to ditch our jet engines faster, I think. I think there's no way around that. So I was hoping to greed this a little bit, but we can get away then with dropping this down to 90, and we would want to check our staging here for sure. So that fires right away, then that fires, then the outer tanks need to be the one to detach, and I want to rerun these fuel lines manually. So I want to make sure that this is running like so, and then this is running like so. It was working previously, so that's fine. And I don't want to have fuel in these delta wings for the moment. We don't really have a good way to use it. So those detachments happen first, and then these detachments, and then that detachment, and those fire. Yes. So then we would want this to happen like sometime around here, honestly. Around the same time this detaches, we would want this to then detach as well. We'll see how that goes. We're getting incredibly close here. We had a couple minor hiccups with that last one. But let's do this. And I think it was losing the gimbaling on those engines, or maybe it was the fact that they didn't disconnect simultaneously. That might be it too. But a little less fuel in there, and that should be good. Okay. That should, of course, mean that we have a faster liftoff as well, which is always good. And a greater thrust-to-weight ratio, too, which is already pretty high. Cool. Just adjusting our angle here a little bit. It's really trying to skid around, but that should be fine. Okay. We'll retract our landing gear. Cool. And I'm just going to fly this basically as high as we can with these engines. Fuel flow on them is dropping. And that's because we are, of course, slowing down slightly. Okay. At this point, I'm going to move detaching the jet engines to here. And these guys will move up to there. Cool. So we'll detach the jet engines at the exact same time that we fire up the vectors at this point. We don't have too much longer on the jet engines. We're just trying at this point to increase our apoapsis a little bit. Okay. So I'm just going to pitch us up here. We're going down right now, but there we go. And we have no control here. Okay. That's perfect. So we really can't lift up with these guys very much. We can belly flop in, but I think we have to combine those together. So the question is, how do we deal with that loss of control when the whiplashes go away? That's the question. The whiplashes are currently what's giving us our control. So, with that being the case, once we lose them, they're very powerful gimbals, to the point where even the vectors aren't compensating. With that being the case, I think we have to try to do this the way we were attempting to previously. And just know that we're going to have the whiplashes lose, and when that happens, our vectors are going to be a problem. I think that's the only way to go. And just try to compensate for it. So off we go here. We're at 80 meters per second now. We've got plenty to take off with. And there we go. We will drop our, or rather retract our landing gear. And then I think we just fire up our vectors right now. And we bring this up and get just as much speed as we can vertically, like this. And we hold here. These outer tanks are draining fast. We detach them and hope that this detaches well. Yeah, that was fine. Cool. Now we've got our center tanks. Those will burn out soon. Atmosphere is dropping, our whiplashes will go away. There they go. Okay, so at this point, we're just going to kind of hover here, and we need next for our whiplashes to detach. Oh, come on. I don't know that they didn't. They didn't detach correctly. That's not what I told you to do. They're supposed to be detached right now. Okay. So we have to, at this point, angle the vectors. There's no way around it. So we're going to have to angle the vectors slightly down. So that means that we have to take, in mirror mode, these guys here, and snapping off, we're going to have to angle them ever so slightly down, like this, so they don't pull us up quite that much. Okay. Hopefully that will do the trick. Those the whiplashes are not running out of fuel, for the record. They are running out of oxygen, and there's not really anything we can do about that. We're very good on everything except that. We just need to find the correct thrust offset now for the vectors. Everything else is good to go here. So off we go. Beautiful. The whiplashes will hold our attitude until they no longer can. So really, maybe we should be targeting like 45 degrees instead of like way up where we were, to have more horizontal speed and to keep the whiplashes online longer. That's probably an ascent trajectory that we should alter. Okay. We'll bring this back a little bit. There we go. And pulling up. And we'll try to chill at about 45 degrees here. Cool. So, now that we're at 45 degrees, we will kick in the vectors. And we'll try to just hold here. The vectors are still wanting to pull us up a little bit. So I think we still need to turn them down slightly. Well, let's bring this up. We're to ditch these fuel tanks shortly. Right about now. Oh, that wasn't a good detach. Okay. I'm always afraid of that. It's like completely random, right? But I can already tell that there is a change that we need to make here. We need to turn the vectors slightly further down. Not much. Ever so slightly. About there. They have to be pointed slightly more down. Okay. So we'll try that. And dialing that in is going to be a big part of it. And also, that's a good reason to go up further, is that wing coming back. Are you relying on luck for the detachment? I would prefer not to. Realistically, that detachment, luck has something to do with it, to be sure. It's more about the attitude that we're at when the detachment happens. That's more what it's about. So we need to be thinking about what the ideal attitude for that is, and that's basically exactly prograde. Exactly prograde is the ideal attitude for that detachment. So, once this detachment is done, we're clear. The other detachments aren't a problem. It's just this detachment. So, let's make our way down the runway here. It likes to meander around a bit, but it's controllable. And we'll take off. Cool. We will retract our landing here. There we go. And we're just trying to bring this on up to the 45-degree marker for now. There we go. And we'll kick in our vectors. There. The vectors are still pulling us up. So I still think that we need to angle our vectors a little bit more down by default. But this is relatively stable here. We'll see how the detach goes. It's always spicy. Yeah. So 45-degree attitude is not really ideal for that detachment. Okay. Yeah. 45 degree is definitely not ideal for the detachment. That's for sure. We're trying to work our way back around to prograde here. It's not going to really work at this point. So we basically need to be pure vertical for that. That means, of course, that we lose the whiplashes, which means that we need to angle the vectors further down. We already knew that. I was just trying to greed it, in all honesty. I was trying to greed the whiplash a bit more. So we're just going to rotate this guy down a wee bit further here in that mode there. Okay, I'm going to get it like 2 ticks down. There we go. Okay. So with that thrust vectoring going further down, that will continue to pull our center of thrust down. So hopefully we'll get the correct one very soon here. Any moment now, KSP. You can do it. There we go. Okay, throttle up. And let's go. Very slow acceleration, to be sure. But we need to be in basically a vertical orientation when we do this detachment. Otherwise, we're just relying on luck, which isn't good. Okay, so let's see how much it feels like these vectors are pulling us up once we get off this runway. There we go. And we'll retract these. I should probably set up an action group for it, but that sounds too much like work. And we'll kick in the vectors right now. Okay, it's not too bad as far as how much up it's pulling us. Cool. You can see it's at an angle there. Fantastic. Let's see how this outer tank detachment goes. It's going to be awkward. Much better. Much, much better. Now our whiplashes are going to run out soon, and that's where we've run into problems previously. Let's see how it goes. Yep. So, as the atmosphere thins, we make our way like this. We'll try to make our way back to prograde and burn over like that as we tumble in. It's just awkward. That tumble right there is causing so many problems. If it wasn't for that tumble, we would be fine. But once that happens, there's no real way to recover this. I think. Whoa, that's a weird spin. Okay. Not sure why we start spinning like that. We're at our apoapsis now. If this tumble didn't consistently happen right there, and I think it's actually not to do with the whiplashes. I think it's to do with our control surfaces not being very effective at that point, is my guess. I keep hoping the vector will be able to take over, but I'm not sure it will. Okay. So, I'm trying to stop this tumble, but there's just no stopping it. Like, it's not going to happen. It's just going to keep going forever at this point. And that makes me very sad. Very sad indeed. Well, one thing we could do is we could try to get more on its pitch control that's causing it. Unfortunately, this thing we can't turn on because it ignores our deploy direction and it's inverted from what it should be. So we can't do that. Unless we did this. Maybe. I wonder if that would do the trick. And then moved this guy back to being down here. If this doesn't work, though, I'm going to have to admit defeat for right now because it is past time to end the stream. Let's see what happens here. More control surfaces aren't necessarily the answer, to be honest, but I don't really know what else to say, really. We're kind of between a rock and a hard place. So, it's awkward. Let's see what happens here. Does this control surface... Nope, it's still inverted. It is still an inverted control surface, even after that. We can try to invert it here. It's still inverted. we can try to change the deploy angle. Wait, now it's working? Okay, now it's working. Cool. I guess that's what you have to do. You have to take the authority limiter and negate that. The deploy direction doesn't actually do anything, from what I can tell. But, okay. Well, we can try it with more control surfaces. We'll definitely need to throttle up. That would help. And we're kind of crackening over this way. This is going to be my last attempt on this flight, I think, and then I'll wrap it up for this stream. We might revisit this later on once I find a proper solution to that tumble. I'll have to think about what's causing it and how I want to counter it, right? I'm not entirely sure how I want to counter that, but I'm pretty sure that the problem is that we lose pitch authority when we reach a certain altitude, because the whiplash is both dropping in thrust and our control surfaces are nowhere near as useful at that altitude. I was hoping that we'd be able to use the vectors gimbaling to be able to deal with that, but it appears to just not be enough on this ascent trajectory. And I think, well, I don't quite know what the reasoning for that is. Like I said, I'll need to think about it. So we'll bring this on up, and we will retract our landing gear. There we go. We've got a bit of a roll going on here that we should get rid of. And let me kick in our engines here. Oh my. Let's not go that way, thanks. Let's come this way. Yeah. No, no, no. No. Okay. This'll do. We'll sit here. Cool. Okay. I'm not really making any changes here. Well, our problem here actually is our roll. Our problem is 100% our roll right now, and... okay. Yeah, that's our issue, is... whoa! Things just act really strange, honestly. Things act really weird. I'm not expecting things to go the way that they're going, and this tumble is exciting. So I think I'm going to have to stop this here for today and admit defeat for the moment, but we will be back to this particular one once I have a little bit more of a handle on what's going on with it. I need to think about the aerodynamics of what's causing this to happen, and that'll just take a little bit of time. So for right now, I'm just going to say we'll be back to this. I'm bad at space planes. We'll get there. A very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including, I don't have my notepad open because I had to restart my computer because of that KSP issue earlier. Okay. Casserole, Sigma162, JJ Gamer, Ken Tuin, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Video Games Are Not Real, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Kadra, Raw Potato, Elmichi Nazi, Justin Everett, Emiliano Cameron, Martin Lawrence, Jens Graham, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time. And yes, Dark Horse, I do know that I just went inverted. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is when I press the button for a roll, sometimes it rolls, and sometimes it decides to yaw instead. I don't have much to say about that, but yeah, there we go. See you all next time.